so I will call the workshop session to order, and we'll adjourn straight into executive if I get a motion.
I move we adjourn to executive.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We will be going into executive session as follows. Number one, relating to the authority of public power utility governing bodies to deliberate regarding competitive matters, utilities. Number two, economic development to receive and evaluate financial information received from a business prospect, to discuss same and or to deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the city has received from a business prospect, that the city seeks to have locate, stay, expand, and or near the city, with which the city is conducting economic development negotiations, and or two, to deliberate an offer of any financial or any other incentive to any business prospect as described above. Excuse me. Number three, consultation with attorney by telephone and or in person concerning matters upon which the attorney has a duty and or responsibility to report to the governmental body, including but not limited to discussion regarding system availability, water contract, and or other matters posted on the regular agenda. We will now adjourn into executive session and see you back then.
Mayor and Council, I'd ask without objection that Von Moreno, Finance Director, Stacey Ibarra, Economic Development Director, Ryan Ward, Assistant City Manager, and Jason Jones, Consultant, be allowed in the executive session.
Yes. First item is discussion and possible action concerning items posted and discussed in council by executive session. We do have some motions.
I move to direct staff to procure engagement and or extension of engineering and with services related to pre-treatment of GMO foods affluent within the parameters discussed in closed session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Second motion.
Move pursuant to Lampasas City Code Chapter 82, Division 5, industrial sewer use to set wastewater surcharge fees at 88.49 cents per pound of biochemical oxygen demand and $23.02 per pound of total submitted solid.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Third motion.
Mayor, I believe Councilman Morris said $23. It should be 23 cents, 23.02 cents. So I think.
I move to amend in the last motion for $23.02 to 23.02.
Second amendment.
New amendment and a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Third.
Then move to authorize staff to negotiate terms of a purchase power agreement related to the city's wholesale electric provider.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving forward, discussion and updates related to the solar eclipse event. Chief Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's always good to be with you. Last time that we spoke, I think we just had our town hall meeting, and City Secretary had brought you an update as far as all the notes on that. Since that time, we've been busy trying to determine some more things that we needed to get to work on. As part of that, we've tried to come up with a few things to address and get guidance from you on these matters. We've come up with a budget that we can work with, and we've come up with some viewing areas that we can work with. The first thing I'd like to do is go over the overall budget with you, and then we can go down to each line item, and that will help explain those viewing areas and some of the costs that we came up with. I believe you have a copy of this in your little workshop, Council. At the very top, we've got Solar Eclipse 2024, the total budget. We break that down into the sanitary restroom, the dumpsters, the fencing, parking management, radios, traffic management, overtime staff, and then supplies. As far as breaking that down and getting these numbers, you will be able to see in the second page up there how we came down with the viewing sites, and that kind of dictated how many porta pots that we're going to have in each location, the hand washing stations, that type of stuff. And then also when we go to the 580 complex, we're talking about having a company come in, and we will let them manage the parking at that location. It includes the fees that are out there, And so we've got all that broken into the cost. We've also got the cost as far as all the planning that we've done prior to this, as far as the overtime, the manpower, the man hours that it will take to accomplish these. So we're going to go over all that this evening. If we go down into the first thing, the total budget is going to be $182,358.69. I like to say, wow, we've got this drilled down to where we know to the penny what it's going to cost. But I think that that last line in there where it says supplies, I think that's probably going to be the biggest line that we move on that. That's just kind of a guesstimate of that. Hopefully, we're not going to need that many more porta pots to come in. Hopefully, we're not going to need that much more overtime to come in. Probably the only thing that you have a question on is the traffic management system with that. That traffic management system for $50,000, that is going to be a contract that we would like to chase down, look into, suggest that we get as far as how we're going to manage traffic within the city during this event. And that's going to relate to how are we going to close streets. We're going to have to work with TxDOT as far as what streets we can close. Ideally, we would like to work with them and be able to barricade some of these streets off, that we eliminate all the traffic just using any type of a side street. We're not going to be able to barricade the streets off as far as like north, anything that's a state highway. We're going to continue to use those, but we would like to decrease the amount of traffic through neighborhoods. So we don't know that $50,000 is a firm number, but that would also include the barricades, the cones, the engineering plan of that to make sure that we get the optimal traffic flow with that. As far as in that first total budget there, do we have any specific questions on any of the other items that are listed? Or do we have any on the traffic plan?
Well, on the fencing at 23,000, what all does that include?
If we go to the second page,
There is 580, right?
yes. And so that fencing at 580 would be to secure 16 acres that we do not want the public to be driving on, going around or anything like that. That is going to be areas that we have sprinklers in. That's going to be areas that we want to maintain and make sure that we don't get any traffic on them because we're afraid of the damage that could be done to that area. Meeting with the Parks and Rec Director, Chris Eicher, he was very adamant about that, hey, we've got to be able some way to control that. And we felt like just having the little flags and streamers out there and a few barricades or cones probably was not going to be sufficient for that.
So
And we're worried about the damage.
Is that renting that or is that buying?
It would be renting that,
buying?
yes.
I mean,
It would be renting. It would be a company that comes in and they get it all set up and they would take it all down, yes.
Same way with traffic management, is that renting a lot of equipment as well?
Yes.
Okay.
On the traffic management, that would include the barricades for the streets. That would include an engineering as far as to make sure the traffic flow is optimal. Along with that, you got to remember that we're looking at posting public safety throughout these locations, and that'll be considered in there as far as the routes that we would be able to take to manage anything that goes on the day-to-day operations of that.
We've contacted these companies, but I guess everyone's thinking like us, and so to try to get this, do this, or we still.
Assistant City Manager,
Okay.
Public Works Director has been in charge of that.
Okay.
I don't know if he can speak directly at this as far as who we have or what we've done with that, but I'll let him do that.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor, Council, that's a good question. The traffic companies, the barricade companies, we've not reached out to yet. However, we've been working with TxDOT, so for message boards to post at the different entrances coming in on some of the TxDOT roads, so we can put messages out there to the public that are coming in. Those types of things, as well as possible temporary traffic signals, so 580. If we're looking at truly that being, an area where folks go, if council decides that's one of our main viewing areas, we need to control that traffic. We're hoping to get some help from TxDOT on some of the technologies, as well as how we work with them to control the signals through Key Avenue and the coordination. And as the chief was saying on the barricade aspect of it, working with barricade companies, I have not reached out to those folks yet, but we don't typically have enough called type 3 barricades, which is the big, 3 bars with the stripes on it to close roads. So looking at, as he mentioned, signalized intersections where we can control traffic to get folks across Key is going to be key, and not letting folks try to get on Key from the side streets that have no traffic control. So those are what we need to work with TxDOT to barricade off. Probably those blocks as they come up so we keep folks from trying to merge into traffic when we're trying to control them at lights and get them through. That's still going to take some work with TxDOT, but that's really what we've been working on. I think the barricade companies, obviously, next steps, we need to get some costs from them. We need a traffic control plan. So basically, we need to define what streets we're closing before we can get any kind of cost from them. We need to be positive what we feel like and TxDOT feels like is going to be beneficial for safety. So as soon as we kind of get that lined out, we can get costs from those barricade companies.
But yet still allow for traffic, for like local traffic, like to get to homes and whatnot.
Correct. Yeah, so folks will still be able to get around the barricade if they're staying, at that house, or let's say have company coming in. They'll still be able to get around the barricade there, but it'll cut off you making that, cross against key, just for safety. That's the big thing.
Y'all gonna stay like on basically east and west?
Yes. As far as public safety goes, PD will deploy their resources probably in a different way than what we will. Fire department will be east and west. We feel like we'll be able to navigate on the north and south end by using some of the other main thoroughfares through that.
Any other comments or questions, Chief?
Do you want to go through the breakdown of the viewing sites? On the second page, you're going to see how we basically took these numbers right here. When we looked at each facility, we tried to establish some viewing sites, and we tried to figure out how many people we could get in these locations. As far as that goes through, obviously the sports complex at 5A is going to be our largest site that we can do that at. And so for that site right there, you'll notice that that's the only place that we have some type of a company coming in to manage that. There are fees that company charges, and it can range anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000 on that. So when you push that down to the smaller sites, it's not going to be cost productive or cost effective for us to do that at those other locations. We feel like we can manage that as a public area and that people can go in and out of there, but the 580 Sports Complex is our biggest concern with as far as having staffing out there at all the time to make sure that everything goes well and it's coordinated. So that's why you'll see those costs there. We basically took the acreage that we have, the parking spaces that we have. We came out with a number of cars. We're figuring 4 people in each car. And then from there, we got with how many porta pots that we need in those locations. And we figured that you need 2 per 100. And that's how we've come up with all this. This is a lot of hours of sitting there at the table going, okay, what if? Yes, sir.
Is this just for the day of the eclipse or for a couple days surrounding?
This would be just for the day of the eclipse. Now, we had originally planned this out as far as coming in on Friday, but I think we backed this down to where this would start on Sunday. At what time?
This is Friday through Tuesday.
This is Friday through Tuesday? It is Friday through Tuesday.
But the traffic management for 580 is only for the day of the eclipse.
There you go. I knew that there was some catch in there. I apologize.
And are those porta potties already booked? I mean, you've got resources.
They're not at this time. They're not at
Isn't
this
that
time.
one of the fears, is that there won't be any available?
I think that's been a widespread fear that everybody's had, but we've checked with lots of people and everybody seems to be pretty accommodating to us so far.
So, I guess this budget has to be approved before y'all can start renting porta potties and stuff?
Well, I think we wanted y'all to have an idea about what we suspect some of the costs are going to be for this, and then based off of that, the direction that we would go to as far as how we proceed going in there, and whether we go with this plan or not. These are the expected costs.
And you said something about like on the parking, the one that was managed at 580 with the company, they would be charging for parking to help recoup some of these costs, or by minimum pay them?
That's the one place that we could actually recoup some of those costs. However, with that, if you've got 2,110 parking places and you charge $10 a spot or $20 a spot, whatever it's going to be, you're going to get some of it back. And every little penny counts. So that would be the place to do that. Yes.
Would we be getting into that though, charging for parking in the city? Can we get into that where we can actually charge for that? Okay.
Certainly.
Just like we talked about, I mean, we're gonna get into real estate or not and stuff like that. Just wondering, can we do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can actually, there's a way that you can advertise those spaces online. And you can do that ahead of time. You could very well come to that day if everything's great and that place is full and sold out and paid out before we ever even do. I don't know that that'll happen, but that would be an ideal world.
$15,000 estimated for parking manager. That's just for that one day. $15K for that company for one day.
Yes, but that's all the people and everything to manage that location. And we are not gonna have the extra personnel through streets or through anything else to supplement that, because we're gonna be using that in other places. And that's where we came up. We'll go back to the second page again, and you'll see just the overtime costs. We've broken it down by each of the departments. And you've got, everybody's kind of put together their man hours and what they think would be expected of that. And you kind of look at that and you go, wow, man, electric and wastewater and all that. And then parks, well, that's where the crux of all this is taking place. So that's where the manpower, the man hours and that takes happening. It's probably going to take all that, for sure. And a lot of that's working a staggered shift between parks, not just working everybody for an 8-hour shift, but spreading that out, and then on top of the cleanup for the next day. So.
Any other questions or concerns? Thank you, sir. We
You bet.
appreciate it. Next item is discussion and updates related to substandard structures.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I brought Mr. Frank Ellett here with me this evening.
We're always glad to see you.
I know, so much fun.
Good evening.
Okay. So you may recall, back in December, we met with the council planning session, and we provided some objectives and progress related to the comprehensive plan. At that time, we identified that code enforcement was a priority. So one of the action steps was to strengthen enforcement and incentives throughout the city to maintain the quality and neighborhood character and renovate older structures in disrepair. So in January, we prepared an inventory of substandard properties that were focused on residential. So at that time, we had about 40 structures identified that needed some upkeep, needed some repair. They were affected by fire, just abandonment, just non-keep up. So we focused on those areas that were damaged or substandard due to a fire or a partial fire of the structure. And this could be an actual house that had affected by a fire, or it could have been a shack or a shed or a substandard building of some sort. So we focused on those areas first to try to get those down. So right here kind of shows you a synopsis of where we are right now. So 1115 West First Street is at the corner of Steel and First. And this actually, the house on the left, or the substandard structure on the left, was affected by a fire. So you can see as of April, that structure has been removed. There's still work to be done, but there has been progress. This one right here, where 204 West 2nd was one of our substandard inventories. This is not affected by fire, however, it is a substandard structure. So recently, there's been a change of ownership, and with that change of ownership, we've actually had a first consultation meeting with them to discuss and find out what needed to happen to bring it up to code. So we have Suite A and we have Suite B that are on 204 West 2nd Street. So both of these properties will be rehabilitated to the best of their ability. 306 East 5th Street, this is one on the inventory list as well. You can see in January there was a lot of debris and stuff in the yard. And you can see in April there was a roll off there. They've actually removed everything, so it's cleaned up and looks much better. 1105 West 1st Street, this again was affected by a fire. You can see the top two pictures that I've displayed from January. And the only thing that I can provide an update on at this time is that the cars have been removed, and that's displayed in the April 2023 picture. However, that there has been, the property owner has passed away since this time, so the family is working on getting everything taken care of. They do already have a buyer for the property, so as soon as all the title information, all the paperwork is taken care of, then they'll be able to sell it to this potential developer, and he will take down the property, and then he'll build something else, which is a good thing. This right here, these is lots. There's about 4 or 5 lots on the 1300 block of East Avenue I, and they're owned by family members. So you have a couple of lots that are owned by a sister, you have a couple that are owned by a brother, etc. So we've reached out to all property owners, and they have started to clean up the debris. So you can see in the first picture in January that there is a shed that was caught on fire, and you can see that as April's progressed, they started to make some cleanup and some improvements to the area. I've also received a call about these lots to see what zoning they are. So it seems to me that they may be up for sale, or somebody's looking at trying to market them to sell them. which could be a good thing as well. We could actually develop houses on it instead of debris, because there are no houses at all in these lots, they're just vacant. So additional updates. So 904 West Avenue E, which is actually E and Arnold type scenario in the corner over there by the cemetery, it had a pretty severe house fire. At the time, the property owner was in the hospital, so I was dealing with his son. Since that time, the property owner has passed away, so I'm giving them time, it's really recent, before I follow up with him again. But when I spoke to him before, he was very willing to clean up and get the property up to code and get the fire structure down due to the fire. On 1401 East 3rd Street, again, this is just a substandard property. I've reached out to the property owners. The first time, and there's, again, siblings own it, but they have actually found a buyer for the property. So it is a local contractor, so it should be done pretty soon. And they'll be able to demo the structure and then build a new one going forward. 1703 South Chestnut is the only one that I've come in contact with that they do not have the means to be able to demo or repair the substandard structure. So we're going to work with them. We'll schedule a meeting with the construction board. We'll talk about what our options are, what it costs, get some estimates for a demolition of the property, seeing about doing an agreement like we talked about before, our contract, and then of course putting the lien on the property. We're going to exhaust all of our citations, all of our efforts as far as code enforcement to move down that line. So it'll take a little bit, but that is our goal for 1703 South Chestnut. But it is a voluntary compliant to where they want us to assist them. So the next steps is kind of what I talked about just previously, was prepare certified letters to address the remaining substandard residential inventory. So I have probably about 25 letters I'm going to send out probably at the end of this week to the remaining people that we have not made contact with and try to get something back from them. Because like I said, I've been really pleased with the responses I've received. Nobody has not contacted me, which is a good thing. So I feel very positive about our efforts. And of course, we're going to ensure that all enforceable efforts have been exhausted to include possible citations, review available contract options with regarding to a payback schedule if we have to incur any expenses for the city perspective, and then of course we'll file the lien for the property as well. And then by the next meeting, I hope to have a commercial listing for y'all, so you can have the substandard listing of the commercial in town, and then we'll start working towards those. And then hopefully in June we'll start scheduling construction board meetings so we can go over all of our efforts thus far, and then discuss 1703 South Chestnut specifically to see what the board recommends. So, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
He was awesome. My sidekick.
Next item. Discussion regarding the Commerce biannual report.
Good evening. Yes, Melissa Unger is here to report on the findings for the first and second report. I did go through and validate all the information in the report. It does balance, and it's all acceptable expenses that you're asking to be reimbursed for. But she will go over all the highlights with you.
She said she's gonna go in and I'm sure that you did. Great, thanks, Vicki. So in your packet, you guys will see the breakdown for the last 6 months, October through March of this year. And as Becky mentioned, there were a couple questions on a couple of items that I went ahead and explained in detail to her through communication earlier. So if there are any questions based on this report, I welcome them now.
I noticed you've lost some and you've gained some, so you're actually out ahead as far as numbers go.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and I noted on the report as well why some of those had been lost, so due to closings and so forth. So.
Right.
Any other questions?
Anyone have comments, questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item, discussion regarding the HOP rule transit system.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And really, I'm going to be turning this over to the mayor here shortly, as she is a member of the Rural HOP Subcommittee. This item has been placed on the agenda to provide council an update and also warm you up to a regular agenda item related to the appointment of less than a quorum of council representatives to serve on a committee with the county commissioners as an ad hoc committee to review some of the needs of the HOP transit system, which is run through the Council of Governments. I think the crux of the question, or crux of the matter, is the funding and the service, and how do we match up the ability to keep those buses and those transportation units moving with some sort of inputs from the county level and maybe even city level. But I believe that the judge would like to set up a meeting with this subcommittee and staff from the HOP later in May. But Mayor, I defer to you for your comments.
Right. So I've been on this, I've been the chair for the Rural Advisory Committee. And it became apparent very quickly why we were having a Rural Advisory Committee, because the HOP is, their funding has dried up in a lot of instances, so they're needing some money to continue the level of service that they provide to the city and to the county. And I invited them to the last meeting just so that we could see the numbers that they're coming up with. And they do not have firm numbers yet, but everyone's budget is going to be impacted by this if we want to continue, as Finley said, the funding and the service. A lot of our residents rely on the HOP to get them to, say, kidney dialysis, doctor's appointments, groceries, any number of things. I found out when I joined the committee that they actually will pick up school children. If you live within 2 miles of the school does not have to pick your child up on a bus until the HOP will take them to school. So there's a lot of people in town and the county, I believe, that rely on this system. And so when we do meet with the judge and his committee, we'll get a better feel for the numbers of people that are affected by this. So I'm looking forward to that meeting and see what resources the county's going to supply us with as far as that goes.
Mayor, I have nothing further on this, unless there are questions.
Anybody with questions?
What's the coverage?
For us?
IHOP.
Oh, 6, they count, they cover 8 counties.
7 or 8.
They do a really good job. They're big in Philly, of course, because they have the rapid transit over there. There's lots of people there. Less numbers in our area, but still we still have numbers. Thank you, sir. Next item. Any discussion regarding the fiscal year 2024 budget?
Mayor and Council, this will be a relatively quick discussion on budget activity. Try to provide you with a rough timeline and how we will proceed. We can't reinforce enough that although the staff works to package the budget up, we really rely on council for you to set funding priorities and to guide us in how that budget looks and to meet the needs of the city for the next year. Just very quickly, we'll take a look at some assumptions that we make going into preparing the budget, some of the target dates. We still have a lot of external costs and information that will be coming in over the course of the next 2 months. Take a very quick look at funds and fund balances and then the next steps, and again, encourage your direction. The assumptions that we make going into budget preparations is that we try to maintain a flat expense. We try not to spend any more this year than we did the year before. And of course, we always, based on council's input, that can go up or down. But that's the expense being flat, I think, is an appropriate way to budget, as well as we also take a conservative view in terms of revenue projections. So that's something that Yvonne and I will typically have a few meetings in her office, and she'll tell me that we need to go a little lower on the revenue, and I tend to push, but anyway, between the two of us, we work most of that out. We also want to take and provide you the use of fund balance as an option. I think what you heard from the auditor through their report is that you do have some latitude. You don't have a lot of latitude, but in the event that we did have a compelling project, particularly if it's consistent with our fund balance policy, certainly that's something that is available for us to include at your direction. We always want to take a look as we start reviewing needs as what do we need? Are we staffed appropriately to meet the objectives that council lines out? Are we compensated for certain positions enough to make sure that those we don't have a high turnover, or we're able to retain those those journeyman level employees, and then also capital needs. We want to also make sure that you're prepared to have a few round tables. I think that's been very productive for council in the past, to sit around a square table and talk with staff about what's going on in their departments and what they might need. The budget organization, I don't really have to go into great detail on, but this is what we consider our operating budget. You have the general fund, which takes care of your bread and butter services to the community, parks, public safety, streets, trash, information technology. And then the proprietary or enterprise funds, those are your business-like funds, your water, electric, wastewater, airport, golf, animal shelter. But all of those, when we wrap everything up, all of the different funds that we use, and we talk about an operating budget, it is just these funds, albeit, as council knows, we have other funds that are non-operating. And this is just an example. That this isn't an all-inclusive list, but an economic development fund, which we transfer money into, and that helps pay Stacy's salary, debt service fund, court security that's restricted to that purpose, hotel occupancy tax, which we've been talking about generally about every other month on. In fact, I've got an update for you in the next slide as well. And then a lot of our capital funds, where we've gone out, the Key Avenue Fund, that issue, the COs and Fund 63, and we have a few odds and ends like the Airport Hangar Fund, Fund 64, that basically doesn't have anything left in it. Fund balances, just to give you an idea of where we stand. You can see general fund 4.2, hotel occupancy, a little over $1 million, and actually I've got an update on that based on the balance sheet. CARES Act, a little over $1 million. Anyway, we've got a number of other funds that I know is helpful to council to look at, particularly if we are trying to fund some additional capital projects and make use of whatever funds might be remaining. Fund 40, this is just because we've been talking about it all the time, and I like to update this spreadsheet, although it's not an operating fund item, but just to let you know that although we've expended, the line down there, expenditures to date, particularly on those items, Campbell Pavilion, Campbell Skate Park, Hannah Spring fencing, although we expended all that, the surplus based on the allocation of those funds has actually grown slightly since we showed this to you in January. The one thing I will point out to you that Melissa made clear is that we've only allocated about $1,600 to the chamber for this fiscal year, and of course we'll have to do it twice to the amount you just did. So that'll also be coming up and take a bite out of that as well. Dates and targets. Staff is currently working, or will be working on year-end projections. We want to have that done by the end of the month. Preliminary department budgets, we would like to have those. I would like to have those in my hand by mid-June for internal review. We go through a back and forth among staff before we package it up for you. And so we try to get that done by the middle of June. CIP report, I don't think it'll be June 12th. I think it'll be the meeting before that, but we hope to have the CIP report ready for your review as well. And I think that's always been a helpful piece of information for council to look at and set priorities and funding for. Health insurance rates, I think we've warmed you up to the fact that our claim to premium ratio is not good this year, but we will see hopefully those rates from underwriting on or before 15th of June. Appraisal district preliminary, I think they've got until the end of July. So we'll get some indication in terms of valuation. That will be useful to set our tax rate. Roll out to council. I've looked back over the years, we typically do this the first meeting in July. We kind of see it as a starting point, then work July, August to fine tune and make sure we've got everything included that council's like. And then we're always anxious for your direction. If you need specific topics placed on an agenda, maybe you want to take a look at utility rates, or you want to take a look at whatever it may be, fees that we charge, or ways that we can make it work a little more efficiently. We'd be happy to put that as a topic for a workshop. If there's anything you need us to research or investigate, certainly we'd ask council that you just let us know, and we will certainly take that up. This is just meant to be a very quick discussion and update, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can we get a weather update?
Yeah, it's red, I mean, it's purple.
It's coming from Kintner and their scale, 60 mile an hour winds. Yeah.
Next item, discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Does anyone wish to discuss any other item? I'll take a motion to adjourn the workshop session. Do we need a break? Everyone good going into the regular session?
Move to adjourn the workshop session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Did we agree we're good to go? Okay, I'll call to order the regular session at this moment, and we'll ask to give us a prayer.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come tonight to take care of business for the city and your people, our visitors. We ask that you be with us, help us to make good decisions, exchange great information, and to do the best we can to help the most people with what we've got. We thank you for the rains that are in the vicinity tonight, but we hope that they come gentle and don't cause any problems. Forgive us of our sins, as always. Be with us in safety until we can meet again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
We do have a couple of proclamations tonight. The first one is Police Work Week. Whereas police officers of the Lampasas Police Department stand watch over our citizens, selflessly risking their lives to protect individuals, families, neighborhoods, and property against crime. And whereas it is important that all citizens recognize the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of local law enforcement agencies. And whereas Monday, May 15th, 2023, is observed nationally as Peace Officers Memorial Day to honor those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty. And whereas the Lampasas Police Department, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered dedicated service to the community. Now, therefore, I, T.J. Monroe, as mayor of the city, do hereby declare May 14th through the 20th, 2023 as National Police Week in the city of Lampasas, Texas, and hereby publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community.
He's a lone ranger tonight.
Yeah.
Short staff. We're all on the field working.
Considering the weather, they were headed this way, but I told them, you better stay in the car and stay available.
Right.
Second resolution. Public Works. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives. Whereas the support of an understanding and informed public is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs, including water, sewer, streets, public buildings, and wastewater disposal, to provide those essential services to our citizens. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of public work officials. Whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding the importance of the work they perform. Therefore, I, T.J. Monroe, mayor of the city, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st through the 27th, 2023 as Public Works Week, building for today, planning for tomorrow, in the city of Lampasas. And I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public work officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life.
Let's put TJ in the middle. How about that? There you go. Ready? Can you slide just a little bit? Just a little. All right, perfect. Thank you, guys. Okay, congratulations.
Next item. Citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. There are none. Citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included may do so at this time. No? I'll open a public hearing at this time to receive citizen comments to amend Appendix A, Fee Schedule, Chapter 82, Utilities, Article 5, Section 8, H, Water Rates of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lampasas, providing for an increase in the rates.
Mayor and council, this item has been discussed at the last several council meetings. The The external impacts to our rates have to deal with the increase in VRA contracts as well as increases in O&M costs that we're seeing come through Central Texas and Kenton Water Supply Corp. You asked for, last time we've handed you out kind of impact sheets a couple times, and last time we neglected to put the water on there, so I have included the impacts for about 8 different rate classes, if you get one that has the bottom kind of cut off, that last number in the far right column, which is the annual impact for that particular rate class, would be $67.44. But you can see it is an increase. I think council was very deliberate in taking a look at this over the last several meetings, but that represents the increase. The 225 on the readiness to serve and 10 cents per 1,000 gallons increase. Did I miss anything, Vaughn?
Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions? Council? Close the public hearing for that. Open the public hearing to receive citizen comments to amend Appendix A fee schedule. Chapter 82 Utilities, Article B, Section F, Electric Service Rates of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lampasas, providing for an increase in the rates.
Mayor and Council, again, this is an item that's been discussed over the last several meetings. These adjustments are to counteract some of the external impacts to wholesale rates that we've been seeing, not only from the wholesale provider as well as the market. So the increases that we're seeing in the market have basically been related to reliability and also changes in how generators can react to the market. The trend for both of those lines was on the order of about 0.9 tenths of a penny is what we're seeing as the trend for the increase. This particular increase asks for 7 tenths of a penny. We feel like we can still operate and maintain that department and the margins required for that increase instead of going up to the 9 cents.
Does the audience have any comments, questions? Council? Close the public hearing. Open the public hearing to receive citizen comments to amend Appendix A fee schedule, Chapter 62, Solid Waste, Article 3, Billing rates and fees related to the collection of solid waste.
Mayor and Council, this item is an annual contracted rate increase based on CPI for our solid waste contractor. And I think sometimes it's helpful to explain why, we don't just set a rate for 4 years, sort of the fixed rate for the term of the contract. And unfortunately, when inflation is as high as it is, it doesn't make as much sense. But in order for them to fix a rate over 4 years, it requires them to hedge. This is just which in theory could cause your waste, or your solid waste contract to be more expensive over the term of the contract, certainly more expensive on the front end. But this is one of the mechanisms in a solid waste contract that I think you'll see in every single one of them. Anything else, Tom?
Any comments from the public? Council? Close that public hearing. Next item, the minutes, a discussion and possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on April 24th, 2023.
I didn't see any corrections, recommend approval.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? We have 2 items on the consent agenda. First one, discussion and possible action regarding purchases and charges in excess of $4,000 from April 1st to April 30th, 2023. The second one is discussion and possible action regarding the March 2023 investment report. Did anyone wish to pull either
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is routine matters, city manager's operational report.
Mayor and Council, I'll make a few brief comments on the memo that's included in your packet. On April 26th, there was a TxDOT sponsored presentation on the I-14 system in Texas. That was conducted virtually. The presentation included the system infrastructure, demographics, and economic analysis, freight, safety, and traffic. The congressional designation of I-14 as a high priority corridor includes roadway from Augusta, Georgia to Odessa, Texas. However, there's no specific federal or state funding at this time. We did include a couple of slides in your packet from that presentation. If you want the entire packet, please let us know and we'll print it out for you. It's about 30 pages, and actually some of the information's pretty helpful, pretty neat. So, Campbell Park, we are sorry to have to report that we did receive some vandalism there over the weekend prior to the publication of this memo. We are continuing, between Monica and Ryan, continuing to work on possible surveillance options and ways to deter that activity from happening. Unfortunately, this happens every year at most of our public facilities. Police are currently looking at all possible leads in the recent incident. Drainage project, we did meet. Yes.
I was just going to ask, on the, I know that y'all are looking into the surveillance and stuff. Do we have any idea when they're going to maybe come to us with like some proposals or ideas?
I think Monica and Ryan are currently working in options for you to look at, and I think when they're ready, they'll bring those to you, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we're also taking a look at the possibility of, the mobile units. I think during Christmas on the Creek, it was handy to be able to move them to locations, but that might be an option as well. Maybe it's a combination of mobile as well as static surveillance. We're not ready to, but as soon as we are, we'll bring it back to you.
Thank you.
Drainage projects, we did meet virtually with consultants that are working on the Lower Brazos Regional Flood Planning Group. They contacted the city about any potential projects that we may have. We also talked a little bit about what we're currently doing in terms of engineering on the Fairview drainage project, as well as some issues we have in the northeast part of town. This is set up very similar to the state water plan run through Texas Water Development Board, whereby if your project is listed, you then become potentially eligible for funding. And loan fund, grant fund, or it's primarily loan fund through the Texas Water Development Board. So they contacted us, maybe we can get a couple of our projects in the queue, at least listed on the amendment to their 2023 plan. So in the event we did want to reach out for that source, there's a possibility that we could receive either low, no interest loan or some grant funding. Wings of Eagles, this is something I think Councilmember Pierce might talk a little bit more, expand on a little bit more, but my understanding is that there was a conversation with their sponsors regarding potential locations to conduct their outreach. They have talked about the possibility of using city-owned historic public school, New Hope Baptist Church. We placed this on here as a report item, but it's maybe a little bit more than that, in that we would certainly like council input and direction if you wanted us to look in more detail on that. And I would yield to Councilman Pierce for any other comments.
Yeah. Wings of Eagles and Rusty Styles reached out to me a couple of days ago, and they had lost their lease down here on the square, and she was looking for a place that she could take her kids and continue to do what she's going to do over here on the square. Immediately, I thought about the New Hope Church and also our color school down here. Actually, we came in for a CIP meeting. I visited with Chris Eicher about it. I said, kind of what do you think about the possibility of that? And he thought, it'd be awesome. It's not being used. The Wings of Eagles, they are prepared on their other lease that they had to do a monthly lease on it. Also, I asked Ms. Fowler to send me a resume of exactly what the Wings of Eagles did, which are included here in the packet. And there's a tremendous community involvement that they have here. So I was excited about the possibilities, and I think he is too. I think it could be a good fit. It's been almost about 2 years ago since we acquired the New Hope, and it's being set empty. I would propose that it needs a tenant in there that's going to look after it, and it might be a good fit. So I ask your consideration for that.
My concern would be that is the New Hope Baptist Church up to code, because I don't think that the colored school is, because like it doesn't have restrooms or anything like that, and it's like an unfinished interior.
Yeah, certainly staff isn't suggesting it's move-in ready, but if you'd like us to take a look and start doing some at least, we've already done some rough assessment from time to time, although it's been a year or so ago, but maybe if that's something you would want us, direct us to do, we could certainly begin that process, but I agree, you're exactly right, it's not move-in ready.
Would they consider doing that like other nonprofits and using facilities that are already like maybe occasionally using this building?
I don't know that there's anything off the table. We can certainly inquire and then bring that request back to council. I'll carry on, but we'll look into it and bring it back to council if there's no objection. Pools, you may notice we've done some recent additional advertisement for swimming pool positions. I think after the initial run at the first batch of applicants, we determined that we may need a little bit bigger larger number of applicants to draw from. We certainly do have enough to open our pools and carry on, but I think our new pool manager felt like if we made another run at it, we could fill out a little more robust staff. EMS reports attached for your review of the 229 calls in Lampasas County for the month of April. 122 or 53% were in the city of Lampasas. Response times in the city remained well within the goal of 4 minutes and 31 seconds on average. Springs were also kind of a neat visit from the Texas Water Development Board. They came in and took a look at several of our springs. On April 28th, they sampled and checked flow. It's just noted without a formal report that Hannah Spring runs about 24,000 gallons per hour and about 8,000 parts per million of corrosive dissolved solids, whereas a typical well is usually about 400 to 600 parts per million total dissolved solids. And that tells you why when you put a metal fence up around that pool and it just starts eating away, like has happened without powder coating, etc. That's the reason for that. Once we get once the information is compiled by Texas Water Development Board, we will share that with council. It should be interesting. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
I have no comment to make at this time. We have no unfinished business, new business. 7.1, discuss and consider the selection of the winner of the website photo contest entry. We have 4 entries. 5.
I move to accept entry number 2.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. 7.2, discussion and acceptance of the Lampasas County Chamber of Commerce and Business biannual reports for 1 and quarter.
Mayor and council, this item was discussed during workshop, and at this time I'm asking for a motion to accept the financial report as presented from the Chamber of Commerce.
I'll make a motion to accept the Lampasas County Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center biannual report for quarter 1 and 2, and to authorize reimbursement in the amount of $27,835.87.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks. 7.3, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance to approve the proposed electric rates.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? 7.4, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance to approve proposed water rates.
Recommend approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Aye.
Anybody have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7.5, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance to approve the proposed garbage rates.
Motion to adopt the ordinance to implement new rates set by contract with Waste Connections.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.6, discuss and consider a resolution of the City Council to support the Spring Road Festival to be held July 3 through 9, 2023.
I make a motion to approve a resolution expressing support for the annual Spring Hill Festival, establishing a time schedule and authorizing city participation.
I will read the resolution. Whereas an annual Spring Hill Festival is held in the city of Lampasas, Texas each year, and July 3 through 9 has been designated as Spring Hill Festival date 2023 by the Spring Hill Committee. Whereas the City Council of the City of Lampasas has determined that activities in connection with Spring Hill serve a public interest and that certain public facilities be made available for use during Spring Hill. Whereas the Spring Hill Committee is authorized to use certain public streets within the City of Lampasas for Spring Hill activities, and that the Hancock Park Pavilion, Poster South Lawn Area, W.N. Brook Park, Gavin Garrett Soccer Fields, and portions of Riverview Drive are set aside for Spring Hill activities. And whereas that special parking and use regulations of the street, Courthouse Square, outdoor pavilions, and park lanes within W.M. Brook Park and Hancock Park on the dates of July 3 through 9, 2023, shall be reserved for Spring Hill activities in the manner designated by the Spring Hill Committee. Whereas the committee is specifically authorized to limit vehicles, groups, clubs, and vendors from city areas utilized for Spring Hill activities, as the committee may see fit to promote the health, safety, and welfare of its participants. Whereas the police department of the City of Lampasas is authorized to enforce and limit the use of such areas as strongly adopted by the Spring Hill Committee in connection with the Spring Hill activities. Now, I do proclaim July 3 through 9 as Spring Hill Week in Lampasas, Texas, and urge all residents of Lampasas to support this annual citywide event.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Are there any questions or concerns? All those in favor? Any opposed? Next item is discussion and possible action regarding hot fund request by the Spring Hill Committee in an amount not to exceed $7,500 for the annual Spring Hill Festival from July 3 through 9.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chad Freeman. I'm here representing the 12-person committee, which y'all know, the Spring Hill Committee. First and foremost, I want to thank y'all for y'all's continued support and everything that y'all do for us. And I have no doubt with y'all's help that we're going to continue to to bring a great week of festivities to this community. And in saying that, we want to go, hopefully with your help, increase the hot funds that were requested from last year from 5,000 to 7,500. Being the single largest festival held annually in this town, we understand the importance to draw the crowd, bring the people into the community. In doing that, we're going to continue with our paper-based promotional items such as your brochures and your posters and things like that. But with keeping up in the times, we're going to increase our social media footprint. The $2,500 increase that we're requesting this year is going to go exclusively, not exclusively, let me rephrase that, because we are ordering more brochures and more concert posters to put in neighboring communities, and it's more specifically the Austin and Waco area. So, but the social media aspect is something that we're exploring. We're trying to really push for that this year. We're looking to hire a social media influencer to help promote and push some of the information about that week's activities out, which is something new to me. We have committee members on the board that are well versed in that stuff. So, and also continue to buy and promote with ads on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. So the $2,500 increase is mainly going to be used towards getting our reach out there with the social media and hopefully putting more heads in beds for that week.
We have to have a motion before I ask the question, right? We need a motion before I ask, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and move, so I can ask the question. I'm gonna go ahead and move to consider a motion, or move to that, approve the hot funds in the amount of $7,500 to assist with funding for marketing and advertising and support of Spring Hill Festival during the week of July 3rd through July 9th, 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have some questions or comments?
Yes, my question was about because I totally get the Facebook ads and TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. My question is about the $1,000 on the social media influencer. What do you get for paying someone $1,000? Are they the ones running the social media, or where do you find a social media influencer?
So they're the ones that we would actually give the information to, and they promote on their social media platforms. We have two different ones that we're considering at this point. One is she's like a mom social media influencer that would promote our kid-friendly activities for that week. Hopefully, draw more of a crowd there, and then also one that's going to promote the concerts for Friday and Saturday night.
So the $1,000 would be split between a couple of people.
Yes.
So the mom social media, how do you find these people? Is it someone local or is it someone not local?
It is somewhat of a local person. It's a friend of one of our committee members.
How many followers and stuff do they have, and where are the followers from?
I'm not exactly sure about that.
Because I think those would be lots of good questions I'd be asking, getting the right audience, do you have the right influencers, that kind of thing. I was just curious.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I understand. We could definitely follow up with that.
So, it just seems like a lot of money for, knowing that the cost of the ads and stuff like that are really cheap. That just seems like, I'm not sure that you're getting, I don't know if you would get your bang for the buck for that high of amount of advertising, but that's not necessarily my forte either. That's why I have lots of questions, because it's up and coming and interesting.
Yeah, it's something new to me too. I'm not, it's obviously, that things get delegated on the committee. This is one of those things that is delegated to me and Blake Parrish. They're well versed in that. I can follow up with maybe to get more of the numbers of how many social media followers they have and things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. I'm good at saying that this one.
We have one abstention.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
7.8, discussion and possible action regarding the approval of a street closure for the Go Texan Street Dance to be held in Park Garden Square September 23, 2023.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Very Good Texan is wanting to bring the street dance in concert September the 23rd down in the square. So we're going to try out a new fundraiser. Just a little background information about Very Good Texan. We were formed in 2014, so we're 9 years old. I'm the only original member that started this group. We started with only being able to give a $500 scholarship single. This year we gave $3,600 in scholarships, so it's gradually increasing. But that being also said, Houston in turn has been able to give scholarships to graduating seniors from Lampasas or Lomita. They started out at $18,000, they've now increased to $20,000. So in the 9 years, they've given $196,000 to this community for the committee that we have here in this town. So just to bring a little bit of awareness of what we do. On that note, we have a Western performer coming. His name is Derek Stentz. He does a tribute to George Strait. So if you look him up, it's very George Strait appearing. I would have to, if I was walking down the street, that's who I would think it was. But we have him in an opening act, starting at 6:30, the opening act. He comes on at 8:30. We should be done shortly after 10-ish, playing music. Depending if there's an encore, I'm hoping to have everything wrapped up, cleaned up by 11 o'clock on the square for that event.
Move to approve the street closure at the 500 block of East 3rd Street for the Lampasas County Area Go Texan Street Dance to be held on the Courtyard Square September 23rd, 2023 from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments?
Sounds awesome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yes. I thought you voted.
I heard him.
All those in favor? Any opposed? 7.9, discussion and possible action regarding Lampasas County Area Go Texan Barbecue Cook-Off, 580 Sports Complex, October 13 through 14, 20.
This will be our 5th annual barbecue cook-off. It is a fundraiser to help with scholarships locally as well. We do bring in teams from out of town. We're Lone Star sanctioned. It's towards the end of the year. Those that also win ours go into a pool for the Jack Daniels or for the Royal. And so we're kind of in between those. So anyone that wins ours has a chance for next year.
I make a motion to approve the annual Lampasas County Go Texan Barbecue Cook-Off and Concert to be held October 13th to the 15th at the 580 Sports Complex.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions?
I have a question, because traditionally, weren't y'all usually the first weekend in October? What?
Yeah, we were the second. We've been the second. We've been the second since our second one. Our first one was in Lomita, and it was the first weekend. We moved to the second weekend in Lomita, and then since then, we've been the second weekend since then out of the sports complex.
How many judges are we gonna need?
I need lots. You're invited.
Yeah, I was just curious because it ends on, it's on the same day that we're having another event in town, and so. I
Yes,
know
Boots and Blazers, yes.
It didn't do that last year.
No, because Boots and Blazers was on the third weekend, and we were on the second weekend. Also too, I know that you said in your motion concert, we are not hosting a concert this year. It did not do well for us last year, so we are not having one. It's just going to be a barbecue cook-off. We've made some changes, and we are bringing back our kids' queue on Saturday.
I would move to include striking concert from the motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
7.10, discussion and possible action regarding the 580 Sports Complex, multi-purpose trail system and disc golf.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This actual item is one that Chris Eicher was going to present. He wouldn't be able to make it tonight, so I'm filling in for Chris. We actually have some individuals here too that would like to speak towards the mountain bike trails. But just to give you and lay down a little bit of groundwork and some background on this, I know council, a lot of folks that are on council now are familiar with this. It did come before council in October of 2020. At least the mountain bike piece of this did. It was talked through council, it was approved at that time for some design services with IMBA, an IMBA company, which is the International Mountain Bike Association. And so Shannon Martin, who's here tonight, worked extensively with that, and Chris Eicher. I wasn't a part of that at the time because I wasn't here in Lampasas. And then it was brought back to council in May of 2021. And so from that point, as it wasn't approved at that time to continue with the trails, it has still been something that Mr. Martin has been focused on out there. We do have some trails. So at 580 Sports Complex, where our hike and bike trails are currently, they're rough cut trails. And actually, it's been several months ago, Samuel Alvarado, who is an avid disc golfer, came to the Parks Board, talked with us. And so these two projects kind of coexist, hopefully, at the 580 Business Park. And so we've been working through how does that look, what is the layout, what's the functionality, how do we look at safety. And so both groups, Samuel Alvarado wasn't able to be here with us tonight. He's a member of the Hill Country Flyers Disc Golf Association. They play disc golf all over, spoke with a lot of the different disc golfers. But some of the things that we really focused on is how do those kind of interact and where can we add some safety. It's been to the Parks Board now 3 separate times. The first time was Samuel proposing this. To give you a little background on the disc golf, his ask for that group is he has the baskets, which are the holes for disc golf. He has donations for that. He has donations as well for the tee boxes, so they'll eventually be concrete tee boxes that you throw your discs from. As well as Shannon Martin has been working through a design proposal with a new company that I'll let you just him kind of talk through that, as well as looking at his group standing up to do the funding for those bike trails. I think the past bike trails was proposed at about 7 miles. I think Shannon's looking at about 8 miles, but how those kind of, interconnect. We've actually got GPS data now, so we have all the existing hike and bike trails shown on an aerial map that I'll be glad to share with council. And we also have collected the proposed disc golf holes, so they've got about 19 holes laid out, and kind of how those interconnect. But as Shannon will talk to you, a piece of it, and the ask here tonight is looking for having that concept laid back out at the 580 Sports Complex and looking at 8 miles, probably removing some of what's there now as far as the hike and bike trails, and then working with the disc golf group because they're ready to go as well, at least maybe to put out their baskets temporarily as things work out. He'll talk a little bit more about that, and then I can follow up with any questions from council. Shannon, one more.
Good evening. Like Ryan said, we've been working on hike and bike trails out there behind the 580 Sports Complex for about 3 years now. We're up to about 5 miles, but there's some great features in there. The property itself is beautiful, with creeks and ridges, but there's a lot of intersections where we kind of had a better idea, and kind of make option A, then option B, option C. So, if you go out there now and you don't know where you're going, it's confusing and frustrating. And somebody, a local mountain biker that we didn't even know rode, and a local doctor here, put it on Trail Forks, an app. And so people from Killeen and then towards Austin started coming to ride on the weekends and started posting YouTube videos about it and everything. So that made us want to upgrade it, so and make it something the city can be proud of. So what we would like to do, we found a design company in Austin, a trail building company in Austin, that's actually built some of the trails that some of our groups are ridden, within a couple hours of here. And he's willing to come in for $12,000, give us 11 days to actually flag the new trail. We'll probably be reusing a lot of what we have, but just taking some of the intersections out of it, and then hopefully getting it up to a minimum of 8 miles. So he can do that this summer for us. We were originally targeting May. We're hoping that he's still got that time slot open for us, but May, June timeframe. And then what he's willing to do is hold a volunteer trail building class for all our volunteers for $1,500. He's not volunteering to hold the class. It's a class for the volunteers to teach us how to maintain it properly, and then to go in and assist in the build. Because what we want to do is a hybrid version of what he offers, and I think you have that in your packet, but if we were just to pay him to go build 8 miles of trails, it's $26,000 a mile. But if we can commit 100 hours of volunteer work per mile, then it's half that. So right now we have the funds committed to get 6 miles of new trail, if we can, get the volunteers. And we're pretty confident we can get the volunteers, because we've had people out there doing random things with no vision, no plan, over the last 3 years. So we feel like if we have a good trail design, and we'll be able to cast the vision to get enough local volunteers to be able to get that from 6 miles cut this year. So we would go in after the design, we would go in and do all the rough cut work, and then they would come in and machine cut it with a mini excavator and some other dirt moving equipment. Because right now, on top of it being kind of a tangle of trail, it's also difficult to maintain, because we just cut it with weed eaters and trail rakes, and he'd come in with a mini X and actually turn the soil 3 foot wide, and then it should keep it. The concept is that would keep the weeds and grass from growing back as fast. So that's our plan. We have the funding for, like I said, for the design. We're confident we can get the volunteers and get to 6 miles this year. Hopefully, eventually get to the 8. What we're asking is that you commit the land to that, so that we don't spend the time and money, and then somebody comes up with a new idea and goes in over the top of our trail system we put in. And then we've also talked to Chris and Ryan about helping us with signage. They said they build all their own signs, so they feel like they can do that for almost nothing for us, which would be a big help. So that's where we're at.
How do you have to
Move to approve moving forward. We gotta get the motion first.
Sorry.
Move to approve moving forward with the trail design phase, and upon completion, set the disc golf tee boxes as designed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions?
How often do you have to run the trails? Per year, like 5 years?
There's some places it's going to be constant, some of the higher rocky areas we don't have to touch, but some of the lower lying areas where, the grass is going to want to come back pretty quick if we don't have enough traffic on it, it'll be a little bit more work. But, most of that kind of area we can get mower in, just mow it.
Who would take care of that? The Parks Department, or?
We will be doing that, and that's something I left out. What we're going to be doing is organizing formally, and we're including the disc golf. We're going to have them put a member of their group on our board, and then we're going to be a charter member of IMBA, so that we fall under their 501c3, and we have access to their liability insurance. So that group will be maintaining the trail.
And I'm guessing y'all have already talked to the Parks Board the Parks Board's already approved this, right?
We've walked a lot with them.
Yeah, and if
Chris has been out there walking it with us.
Right. Yeah, we've met on site. I think the obligation to keep in mind from the city standpoint is there will be some maintenance with the disc golf as well as this as far as parks. Disc golf, I don't think they were talking about. They play in some rough areas, so there'd be mowing a few times a year would be some of the maintenance, obviously cutting some brush. As Shannon said, they intend to spend, their time taking care of those trails, but there would still be some time there for parks. While I know there's been a motion too, I just want to make sure we're clear. There's been a motion in a second. I would like council to consider, as this is written, the time frame, and that's something I talked about Shannon. The disc golf group is ready. Shannon feels pretty confident they'll have the concept done, but I wanted to make sure, because we all know at times, sometimes the concept might get hung up, whoever's doing the design. So I wanted to make sure too, we're being considerate of the disc golf group. Both these groups have worked well together. We really appreciate that at Parks Board. They've come back, put their heads together to try to move something forward. But there may be something to consider in that motion for council with some sort of time frame added to that, just to keep things moving in case the design concept.
That segues into a question I had. So if there is a hold up with the design phase, is that going to hold up the disc golf course? Because
They've
that's
agreed
pretty
to.
much, one second. That's pretty much ready, isn't it?
It's ready, and so that's why I didn't want a hold up, because I know Shannon's adamant about keeping that moving in the design concept. But if there is some sort of hold up, as I mentioned, the baskets are movable. The disc golf group is very amenable to saying, hey, we won't put the permanent pads in until the concept's done. But I would like the ability for both groups to work together, but the disc golf, if there's some sort of delay, and I think Shannon's on board with that as well, to let them go ahead and at least set up their baskets and kind of lay things out, based on what the concept ends up being.
So what time frame are you looking at?
I kind of referred to Shannon. He was saying middle summer, so maybe July.
Yeah, we're looking at June, but we've actually asked the Frisbee golfers to just go ahead and put their stuff out there, in temporary form, so that, as the designer's out there, he can see it, we can avoid it in the first place. It's just gonna say it's happy with it later.
And then you said you wanted to get one of the members of the disc golf onto y'all's group. Is the disc golf the 503c also? So they're what are they?
The Hill Country Flyers, I can't speak to that group specifically, if that group actually has the 501c, but I can say Samuel and the group that he usually plays with are the ones that have worked to get the donations for the tee boxes as well as the baskets. I don't know their background, but I do believe, I know that Samuel and the group that he's working with are not a formalized group.
Is most of this going to get covered by y'all too? I mean, like you're saying, with the being able to cut that number down to the 13,000 or so per mile, are y'all covering most of that too?
We're covering all that. So between the volunteers and the money we've raised that we have committed, we should be able to get to 6 miles, and then hopefully next year we can push it to 8.
You just don't want it to go to anything else and want it designated.
Right, yeah, exactly. Once we spend the money and we spend the time, we just want to make sure it stays there. Because we really feel like, if this is going to be something, I don't know if you're familiar with, like Walnut Creek, Metropolitan Park in Austin, or Brushy Creek in Cedar Park. It's going to be really comparable to that. On that quality, Walnut Creek is probably what I would compare it to the most. I mean, there's similar creeks. This is probably just 80% as good, but that's Austin. And we're a rural community, and we really think it can get a lot of traffic on it.
That's some good work.
So,
Thank you.
I'd like to move to amend setting a time frame for trail design by July 15th,
sounds good.
2023. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, discussion and possible action regarding the approval of Spring Hill fireworks event coordinated by Pyrotechnical Fireworks to be held during Spring Hill Week at Gavin Garrett Soccer Field on July 5th, 2023.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The staff is requesting approval to allow the Pyrotechnical Fireworks Incorporated to conduct the annual fireworks display on Wednesday, July 5th to begin at approximately 9:15. It lasts about 15 minutes. This is the same company we've used for the last 5 years. We do have all their liability insurance. We do have the fire marshal's request. We have the site plan already approved. And the fire marshal has signed off on the documents, and I did receive payment today, so we're good to move forward.
Well, I move to approve Fireworks Incorporated to conduct a fireworks display on July 5th, 2023 during Spring Oak.
Second.
A motion and a second, any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next item, discussion and possible action regarding appointment of city council members to the Hot Rural Transit Subcommittee with Lampasas County.
Looking for volunteers, Mayor.
Nick Davis would make a great
Yes, I'm volunteer.
How often do they meet?
We don't know. It's going to be a short one there.
I'll do it.
2's enough? 3 of us?
Yes, ma'am.
Davis and Zach, thank you so much for volunteering your service. Do we need to motion them in, or we just take their volunteerism?
I think it would be appropriate for council to formally appoint them.
Someone want to do that for me, please?
I motion to appoint Zach and Davis to be a volunteer on the Hot Rural Transit System Subcommittee along with Mayor Monroe.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You two don't count. Okay, thank you. 7:13, discussion and possible action regarding amendments to the 1445 agreement between the city of Lampasas and Lampasas County.
Some council may recall the negotiation we had with the county several years ago regarding an updated, what they call was the 1445 agreement. It refers to HB or House Bill 1445 that was enacted by the legislature with the purpose of trying to make sure that for those properties that were in the cities or municipalities' extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction, that there was only one hoop to jump through, so that a developer or builder would not have to meet county's regulations as well as city regulations. And the process is basically provides for an interlocal agreement between the county and the city to regulate and administer subdivision regulations, platting in the city's extraterritorial zoning, extraterritorial jurisdiction. Since the time, this has been, 2 or 3 years ago that we did that, there have been a couple of developments that have come up. Our agreement previously or currently is kind of a continuum or a conditional level of authority depending on the utility service, depending on whether the development was residential or commercial. And I think what this county would prefer is to come back with something a little simpler and just saying, if it's in the ETJ, the city regulates the platting, regulates the subdivision regulations, etc. They have specified there are some differences in the county in terms of them accepting dedicated roads, and so they've asked us to include on any plat note the fact that the county does not accept any dedication of roads. But short of that, I think that was all something that JC felt comfortable with. Legal counsel has reviewed the agreement. I think it does simplify the arrangement and certainly makes it very clear to anyone developing property in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. And I think just the one citation in the agreement that I would point out would be on page 196. And it's after all the whereas, item number 1. The city granted exclusive jurisdiction, and it spells out within that paragraph really the summary of the entire agreement. As I've said, staff and legal counsel has reviewed it, and we submit it to council for your consideration.
I make a motion to approve the city-county plat approval agreement that will supersede all previous agreements between the city of Lampasas and Lampasas County pertaining to plat approval, any related permits for development and conveyance of street maintenance.
The motion and a second, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That concludes our meeting, someone needs to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.